the entity. This is the main antagonist in this mod. People call him the three-eyed devil, not just because of his 3 eyes, but also because he's basically a 5-block tall tower of nightmare fuel that's part of a parasitic species called Imagonivus obscurus, creatures that literally feed on your fear and attention. In the T dimension, this guy is a total menace. He'll wander around breaking your torches to keep you in the dark, and if you try to hide behind walls or tower up, he'll just break through the blocks or pillar right up to your face. He's even powerful enough to break bedrock, which is just straight up terrifying. And even if you have a cross, you can't get too comfortable. It only stuns him for a few seconds right before he's back on the hunt again. Now, in the overworld, he's more of a psychological stalker, teleporting around just to taunt you. But he's also tight with the messenger, so if you see that lanky legless figure waving his arms, you better start running because the big guy is usually right behind him. Eyeless. Of all the ways to end up haunting a maze dimension forever, I love blocks 4, 5, 7, 8 got one of the most specific. The eyeless is a Steve skin with sewn shut eye sockets, a gaping mouth, and an iron pickaxe in hand, permanently stationed in the brickways, a labyrinthine dimension with corners built for him to disappear around. He spawns when you break his crystal block, signaled by a cave sound, and from that point forward, his mission is simple: find you and end you. He can't be damaged by the player or fire, but he can break and place blocks, meaning hiding isn't really an option. It just buys time. And if you happen to have crystal shards or a crystal block in your inventory, he doesn't even need line of sight. He can just sense you. In the lore, Eyeless was once a real player who got killed in a dream and woke up trapped in the brickways, where he became completely obsessed with staring at a crystal block. So much so that a demon in the dimension got annoyed because he wasn't suffering like everyone else. So the demon took out his eyes and sewed them shut. The cruel part is that he could still see the crystal block, only now purely in his head, and the hallucination drove him completely insane. Richie Dude 2001. At a glance, Richie Dude 2001 looks completely unremarkable. A normal 2010s era Minecraft player, black and blue headset, brown hair, sunglasses, black hoodie. The kind of skin you'd scroll past without a second thought. Then he starts suiting up in real time and you realize your mistake. In chase mode, he equips full diamond gear, bridges and towers to reach you no matter where you go, breaks through bedrock if he has to, and moves at 3 times a normal player's speed, faster than any mob in vanilla Minecraft, while spamming chat with leave, leave, and die. This might seem scary, but knowing his story a little bit makes you a little more empathetic. At least, he was bullied relentlessly for his obsession with valuable blocks, so he cut everyone off and built his entire collection in private, genuinely proud of what he has accomplished. However, becoming so obsessed with this, he actually stopped recognizing his own face in reflections. His aggression towards you is just him not wanting to be seen by anyone in his dimension. Hunger. When a cave noise plays in the bedrock hallways and the subtitle reads, "It's hungry," instead of eerie noise, that's your only warning. Also known as the sphere, this is a swirling mass of black smoke wrapped around a single eye, surrounded by 2 rows of jagged, razor-sharp teeth. It follows you in its stalking phase, but once you come within 10 to 15 blocks of it, it briefly changes form and then comes at you at full speed. If this entity catches you, you're getting kicked from the game with the message, "Eaten alive." It has 1000 hit points, deflects arrows, and will chase you even in spectator and creative mode, meaning there is no mode in which you are safe from it. It can even break bedrock in its chase state. The only thing that damages it is explosions, which makes killing it possible, just very slow given its 1000 hit points. Most players don't bother and just run. Helpless. Helpless is easily the Wonderland.Jar's most tragic figure, and his backstory makes his appearance even more disturbing. Originally a 9-year-old player named Yuso Helpless 2, he was the younger brother of Jacob05, a member of the prominent Anarchy server that included other entities on this list. However, unlike the rest of the entities, Helpless isn't out for blood or revenge. Instead, he just wanders aimlessly until you get too close and he explodes into a dark red mist, which does inflict the player with total blindness. The Fate. Fate XX092 was blamed for bringing everyone to Wonderland. Whether that's actually true is unclear, but the people who ended up there weren't in a generous mood about it, so he was really punished badly, and his model reflects this directly. 3 blocks tall, armless, red skin covered in black slashes like char marks, head elongated and twitching to one side. In the overworld, running into him is a 50-50. He either chases or despawns, and you won't know which until it's already happening. But in Wonderland, he always chases, moving at extreme speed, stepping over 3 block walls without breaking stride and crossing water faster than he should be able to. After you've escaped Wonderland once, a calmer version starts appearing, normal proportions, name tag reading Fate XX092, standing still, despawning if you get within 16 blocks. Whatever verdict he's still waiting on, he clearly hasn't left. Flicker. At somewhere between 15 and 30 feet tall, it is one of the biggest things in this mod, and the moment it makes eye contact with you, your head is no longer yours to turn. Its face is an endless cycle of rapidly scattering white dots, and locking eyes with it forces your camera to stay fixed on those dots while they deal enough damage to kill an unarmored player outright. The only escape is getting a block between you and its face before your health gives out. That's because fighting it directly isn't a realistic option for something with 1000 hit points that deflects every arrow you fire at it. Flicker shows up in the Overworld, Wonderland, and the depths, and it also occasionally drops the same chat messages as the entity. When it's nearby, creepy sounds play, captioned in-game only as 3 question marks, because even the subtitles aren't sure how to describe what it's doing to you. Carrier. Carrier is a bloody, armless version of Steve that wanders through what once was and the tunnels, and judging by the sounds it makes, it is not having a goofy good time. Once it spots you, the cries get worse, more distorted and desperate, kind of like Stephen Hawking that's having a meltdown. But what's interesting is that it seems like it's about to run out of time to say the things it needs to say. And here's the thing, it kind of is. Players have reported hearing actual words buried in Carrier's audio, things like save me, help me, and please, which makes Carrier the only entity in this mod documented to actually have a voice, and it's using that voice to beg. In the lore, Carrier was once a real player on an Anarchy server alongside a whole group of others you'll be meeting shortly. During the events of archive-ourworld.move, he was sent to another dimension that we can't really mention. Then, in don'tfight.move, the entity found him and messed him up. So the next time you hear something wailing in the tunnels, just know that it's not just a sound effect. That's someone asking for help, and the mod decided the scariest thing it could do was make you ignore it. Eyed flesh. The flesh, or the eyed flesh, is basically a walking nightmare fuel. Most of the time, you'll spot him lurking in the jungle warehouse looking like a red humanoid covered in random, messy patches of skin. Players actually call this his suit because he's just using those bits of flesh to hide his true self. In this phase, he's mostly just a weirdo who stalks you from the shadows, though sometimes he'll pop up right in your face for a jump scare that leaves you blinded and nauseous for a few seconds. But things get intense quickly if you get too close. There's a rare chance he'll drop the act and reveal his true self, which is the Eyed, a high-speed nightmare covered from head to toe with unblinking eyes. Once he's out of his shell, he's a total tank with 300 hit points and can even walk right up 3-block high walls to get to you. If he catches you, he flashes a bunch of eyes on your screen and leaves you at a terrifying half-a-heart state. So your best bet is to carry a cross to banish him or use lava to block his path, since he can't break blocks. Your Mind. Your Mind is a dark, black and white version of the standard Minecraft player model, spawning most frequently in the Answer dimension. It immediately starts mimicking you in real time, copying your armor, whatever you're holding, even before the chase begins. But during pursuit, it breaks through any blocks in its path, locks your camera onto itself so you can't look away, and types messages in wingdings in chat that translate to "you should not be here" and "go away." If you become unreachable, it switches focus to a nearby player rather than giving up. But if it catches you, the game disconnects, not with a standard error message, but with a single line on the disconnect screen. I am you now. The Pillar. The Wonderland verse is full of black portal blocks, which is why the pillar fits in perfectly. In fact, players walk up to it all the time thinking it's a doorway somewhere. In its idle state, it does absolutely nothing, and you can walk up to it, climb it, and treat it like furniture without consequence. In its haunt state, it flickers in and out of existence and despawns if you cross within 16 blocks. In its stare state, it rotates to face you, and looking directly at it gives it a 50-50 chance to open, which it does like a set of doors, revealing a messed up player character inside, flooding your screen with blindness, nausea, and darkness, and spamming chat with hexadecimal code that translates to "look at what they did to me," repeated over and over for about 10 seconds. After that, it despawns, and either the Fate or Twisted No One spawns somewhere nearby in its place. No One. No One, also known as Your Friend, appears as a Steven skin with a jittering black square censoring his shaking head. He speaks entirely in reverse text and calls himself Your Friend, and if you type "hi" in chat, he'll respond "ole." He operates in a few different modes. Sometimes he watches from a distance, sometimes he hovers in the air, sometimes he follows at a respectful distance and waits. But the hostile version drops all of that, turns invisible, and tries to catch you, which sends you straight to Wonderland. He's also believed to be the one building all those strange little structures that keep appearing on the surface for no apparent reason. the pyramids, the floating brick cubes, the poles. As for why he speaks in reverse, he incorrectly terminated himself, which messed up his windpipe. So that explains the speech, at least. Somebody appears to be a corrupted version of the Alex skin merged with the eye and spawns in the tunnels. If it spots you, it immediately starts chasing you, mining through walls if you try to use them as cover, bridging over gaps if you try to use those, and typing messages in chat like a crazy ex-girlfriend. Its name tag rotates through options like Imnotrial, You Will Not Wake Up, and Servant of the Three-Eyed Devil, which probably shows you a bit of its personality. Now, in the unfortunate event that it catches you, it'll send you to a different dimension, specifically the T dimension. But this entity isn't particularly fast, so running or placing blocks are all great ways to manage it. This creature is the corrupted version of the default Steve skin merged with the eye, face darkened, eye features distorted, and it spawns most often in the tunnels but occasionally turns up in other dimensions as well. Once it spots you, it mines through any block in its path and places blocks beneath itself to keep the chase going over any terrain, so there's really no outbuilding it. As for what happens when it catches you, the outcome depends on where you are. If you're caught in the overworld, it sends you to sequence or inconsistency, but anywhere else, you're getting sent to the T dimension. But there's also a chance that it skips the teleportation entirely and just hits you with the blindness and minor damage. Now, if you want to fight back, explosives can actually kill it, splash potions of slowness can buy you some distance, and the cross stops it entirely. Twisted No One. The Twisted No One represents the tragic end of a player named Onel W No64, who had an unfortunate run-in with the entity himself. You'll recognize him as a pale, stretched out version of No One, with elongated limbs and blood dripping from beneath that iconic, jittering face box. He typically spawns after a pillar encounter in 3 terrifying modes. In his flying state, looking at him either hits you with blindness and kills your sprint or sends you straight to sequence or inconsistency. Meanwhile, in his hunt state, he stares while visible, then turns invisible and chases at extreme speed before reappearing. Contact sends you to sequence or inconsistency. However, if you catch him in his stalk state, getting too close either teleports you or he just despawns. But luckily, if you build up high enough, it'll counter the hunt mode since he can't reach you when you're elevated. The Eye. This entity is a total creep, taking the form of an all-black humanoid figure with one singular, hyper-realistic eye where its face should be. The eye primarily hangs out in the Endless House or the tunnels, and its whole vibe is centered around the idea that it is constantly watching over your presence. Now, when it appears, it doesn't charge at you right away. Instead, it starts out in a stalk state where it simply observes from a distance. However, sometimes it will teleport slightly closer and closer to you, almost like testing how much of its presence you can handle before you snap. Once it gets close enough to you, there's this brief moment where it seems stunned before it snaps into a full-on chase state and starts hunting you down. If it manages to actually lay its hands on you, you're either going to get dragged straight to the T dimension, or if you're in the overworld, it will instantly drop your health down to a terrifying half a heart. But if you're fast enough to outrun it, it'll eventually give up and despawn, leaving you alone at least for a little while. Skinless. Standing nearly 3 blocks tall with a faint dark red gradient toward the edges of its limbs and red particles dripping from its body, the Skinless spawns in what once was and remembrance and has 2 very different ways of interacting with the player. In its stare mode, it watches from a distance and vanishes with a distorted noise if you close the gap. But in its chase mode, it comes at you nearly twice your sprinting speed. Outrunning it is considered by most people to be nearly impossible, and if you get caught, your game will freeze and you get kicked out from the world. On occasion, you can also get teleported to a random location within a large radius instead, which is just confusing and a little eerie. The Spawn. The Spawn is a slightly messed up version of Steve. His arms look like their injured, blacked out face and with a head constantly twitching. He appears underground in the overworld and inside the maze dimension, where in its first state it simply materializes somewhere nearby and stares until you approach or stare back long enough, at which point it disappears. Before it enters its chase state though, it gives you a warning. Your action bar flashes, run, or hide, which is one of the more considerate things this mod has ever done for you. Then it drops to all 4s and comes at high speed, and contact in that state is an instant kill. Inside the maze specifically, its chase version spawns at the exact point you first teleported in, so it already has your entry point and works outward from there. Take the action bar warning seriously. Vessel. A stone statue sitting dormant on platforms throughout the catacombs, Vessel is completely harmless during the day. You can attack it, kill it, do whatever you want with it. At night it activates, pursues a random player, and becomes fully immune to all damage except the cross. The vessel is essentially a weeping angel, so if you've seen Doctor Who, you already know the rules. The mechanic is this. It freezes in place the moment you look directly at it and resumes moving the moment you look away, which means surviving requires maintaining eye contact you cannot afford to break while trying to navigate through a dark underground dungeon to an exit. Demonic fish. This creature spawns in bodies of water across the overworld and the abyss, gets within range of a player, and then, most of the time, just despawns and leaves, pretty much. However, when it does decide to follow through, it lunges fast enough to shoot straight out of the water and onto land, and hitting you has a chance of triggering a wave of cave noises all at once. And if it kills you, your death message doesn't show its name, it just shows a fish emoji. Ethereal Angel. 5 blocks tall, floating in the sky after you've escaped Wonderland and classified by the mod as a demon. The Ethereal Angel is pretty much lying to you with its name. It's super rare and you'll usually hear it before you see it. A distant resonating of bells is your only warning that one has spawned nearby. What makes it interesting is its unpredictability. Look at it and it might teleport you back to your spawn with a diamond, or send you to bed with nothing, or launch you high into the sky with slow falling, which is either mercy or a delayed problem, depending on how you land. Get close to one on the ground and it'll say either, "He is coming," or "Prepare," and touching it outright can send you back to spawn with a golden apple. So it warns you, rewards you, and threatens you, sometimes in the same encounter spots. But now knowing it's a demon, you'd be smart not to read too deeply into its generosity. Ethereal Demon. Mainly found in the slip, though it's not above showing up in the overworld or the nether when it feels like a change of scenery. The Ethereal Demon is one of those entities that seems manageable right up until it isn't. It spawns with a chat message, then starts walking towards you, slow at first, but then picks up speed the longer it has you in sight. If it reaches you, it plays a sound, blinds you for a couple of seconds, and despawns, which by this mod standards is practically a handshake. But where you are when that happens changes everything. In the slip, that same encounter sends you into a dimension you really don't want to be in, but in the catacombs, it drops you into the bedrock hallways instead. 2 of the worst places the mod has to offer. Friend. Unsurprisingly, Friend isn't actually your friend. It takes the appearance of beta Minecraft Steve, spawns behind transparent blocks like grass, slabs and glass, and either watches you from a distance or slowly walks towards you before despawning. Most of the time it's harmless, but trying to approach it carries a chance of the entity spawning in its place instead, which is the mod's way of saying that when something in Wonderland offers you friendship, the correct response is to keep walking. Messenger. The Messenger is a tall, black, legless figure with long arms that spawns in the overworld and Remembrance. It'll wave its arms slowly at the sides and immediately vanish whenever you get too close to it. While this creature is technically passive and doesn't show any intent of hurting you, it can get creepy. You see, occasionally it can spawn a copy of the player nearby that just stands there doing absolutely nothing, and nobody has an explanation for it. In other times, it drops one of 2 messages in chat like, "I know what you are," or "I know who you are," which gets sent from a blank username. However, the biggest problem with this creature is that once it disappears, it can occasionally spawn the entity, which just means bad news bears for you. So yeah, you can shoot it with an arrow to make it leave early, but you're not really sure if that's something you would want to do. Remember Me. Remember Me is a version of Steve that went through something bad. Blacked out face, long black arms and legs, blood covering the skin. Unlike most entities that announce themselves with a jump scare, this guy is a silent flyer. He spawns in the air without making a single sound, just floating towards you like a ghost that's lost its way. But once he gets close, he deals 3 hearts of damage, blinds you, and cuts your sprint for a couple of seconds on contact. Here's the thing though, you can actually fight back. A sword or an axe will get rid of it after several hits and it dies in a burst of black particles. But if combat isn't your preference, hiding under a roof works too since it can't phase through blocks. If you have the cross though, you can dispel it entirely. Siren. Also formerly known as the player XX Siren 39XX, whatever happened to this entity left it in this unfortunate state. No legs, no eyes, bright white teeth, and drags itself across the floors of what once was and the tunnels. The Siren hauls itself around until a player gets close enough, then it leaps. And despite having no legs whatsoever, it can jump several blocks high, so climbing up isn't the escape you're hoping for. Coming into contact with it applies the wither effect, which drains your health when you're already dealing with the situation. Unfortunately, not much is known about this creature besides the mention of someone named Jacob in a book found in what once was Sorrow. Sorrow appears in the overworld and most dimensions without any particular trigger, and it's usually not an immediate threat, just in a crying position with its hands covering its face. Its skin is a darker, more saturated version of Steve, with a black liquid coating the top half of its body and a white spot at the center of its face, and most of the time it spawns in a static crying position, hands covering its face, doing nothing. Now if you walk up to it, it disappears. In its stalk state, it drops the crying posture and just watches you, and in its third behavior, called behind, it points in a direction and tells you to look that way, which is when things get more complicated because there's a chance the entity spawns during this state. While it only has 10 hit points, it deflects arrows easily, so good luck trying to land anything. On its own, it won't hurt you, but if it points at something, that might be the cue to the entity's entrance. The Red Eye. This entity is a total nightmare, acting as a much more aggressive, blood-soaked version of its cousin, the Eye. You'll recognize it by that single, hyper-realistic iris glowing a distinct angry red, and if you make eye contact with it, your camera locks into a forced stare while it hits you with a nasty combo of blindness, slowness, and a wither effect that drains your health over time. The Red Eye also moves with terrifying speed, and you can't stop it with water because it gains Dolphin's Grace. However, you can fight back with explosives, so if you can avoid direct sight and attack it with that, this entity is manageable. Wanderer. This entity looks like a total freak, a tall pitch-black figure with long limbs and absolutely no head. But he's actually one of the few things in the Wonderland-verse that won't try to end your existence. You'll usually spot him lurking in the Overworld, Remembrance, or even Wonderland, just hanging out in the distance. Now, he starts off in an observing state, but he'll vanish the second you try to get close. But if you're patient, he enters his gifting phase where he'll keep disappearing and reappearing closer and closer to you, eventually dropping random loot like coal, crystal shards, or even raw chicken. And here's the interesting thing, he's the only known source for the Wonder Feather, a crucial item used to craft the Ethereal pillow. He can even bridge over water to reach you if it's in the way, so don't be surprised if he walks right across a lake to deliver your items. So while he looks like a walking nightmare fuel, he's basically just your weird bestie who seems super obsessed with you. Wasonce. This entity is a total mystery, appearing only as a rare spawn that turns up in what once was. He's got a hollowed out hole where his face should be, a visible neck, and stands what looks like a grey shirt and black pants. Now, his main mechanic is triggered simply by looking at him. The moment you make eye contact, he rapidly yanks you toward his location, dragging you across the ground like a magnet. And on contact, he hits you with a Darkness 2 effect that leaves you completely blind for a few seconds while an eerie sound blares in your ears. But unlike some of the god-tier entities in the Wonderland-verse, Wasonce is actually vulnerable. He only has 40 hit points and takes damage from arrows, so you can pick him off from a distance before he pulls you in. Beyond that, most of his behaviors are still completely undocumented, but considering he was once a real player named Wasonce alone on that doomed Anarchy server, he clearly isn't interested in making new friends. Watching. A 2D image of a realistic human eye floating above the ground and occasionally blinking. Everything about the watching is creepy. It spawns in the endless house, corners, and catacombs, but it doesn't do much of anything else. It doesn't move towards you, doesn't attack, and you can even walk up to it and it just disappears with a cave sound. That's pretty much the full interaction. Wonder Tree. This entity stands roughly 7 blocks tall with a glitching head and tentacle arms ending in mouths stolen from the demonic fish. Now, the Wonder Tree isn't subtle at all. He'll announce himself in the chat with creepy messages like, "Don't run," or "Follow us," before slowly stalking you. However, once he snaps into his chase state, he becomes a high-speed threat that hits you with a nasty darkness effect. And if he catches you, you immediately get kicked from the game with the message with "Go to sleep." And with 600 hit points and total arrow immunity, your best defense against him is building high. Woodseeker. A long, lanky wooden figure around 3 blocks tall with a gaping hole for a face and something leaking from parts of its body. The Woodseeker lives exclusively in the Endless House and spends its time chasing you. When it gets close enough, one of two things happens. It either jump scares you for 2.5 hearts of damage, or it simply vanishes. There's no way to know which outcome you're getting until it's already happened. Even though it only has 40 hit points, keeping your distance is still your only hope. After all, if it can't catch you, it despawns on its own. Zero. Zero is the Wonderland-verse's way of making you wonder if you actually heard something or if you're just finally losing it. It's a completely invisible entity that can only be viewed using hitboxes. It likes to hang out in the Overworld, the Jungle Warehouse, and the Endless House, but it's not there to make friends. Now, if you stay still, you'll hear footsteps, and if it happens to fall off a ledge, you'll even hear that fall damage sound coming from empty air. Sometimes, instead of being slow and calculated, Zero loses its patience and sprints at you. Strangely though, it doesn't actually attack you. It usually stops about 3 or 4 blocks away, just standing there in silence like it's observing you. But if you try to walk towards it, Zero despawns and leaves you alone. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.